Welcome to Sports Scope, the most influential sports talk show in the nation.
What is today, the 19th?
Stay tuned for updates and great sports content.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this 11th day of January. Got a great guest coming back to the program. Mike Richmond will be here 30 minutes past the hour. Mike is a historian from the D.C., Landover, Maryland area. Had him on a couple of weeks ago. He's got the George Allen Football Life book. Going to get his take on the Washington Commanders coaching search. Now, like I said yesterday, that's probably the second, maybe the third best job available out of the 8 head coaching vacancies available in the NFL. Obviously, going to talk about Bill Belichick. What a week, Pickles. Bill Belichick out at New England. You won't be surprised. You will be surprised at how much he was making and his career earnings. I found that off the internet. It is a wow factor of what Robert Kraft has been paying Bill Belichick. Got some soundbite from that. Where do I think that the Patriots should go next? Where do I think that Belichick should go? He's going to try to get that record, that 15 wins to beat Don Shula. He's going to try to get that record. Got a few thoughts on that. But first, let's go ahead and take our first and only break. And I'll be back here in 49 seconds. We'll hit the ground running here on Sports Scope. Hello, Sports Scope followers. The program has seen tremendous growth since going 5 days a week. I just wanted to thank everybody for your cash contributions and sharing the program with friends and families. Just a reminder, if you want to contribute to the program, go to the Cash App, the cash sign, and Sports Scope. There are other ways to contribute to the program listed at the bottom of the screen. If you want to advertise on the program, go to sports, that is sports with an S, another S, scope, SKOPE, at gmail.com, just like it's listed at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and enjoy the program. All righty then. Yeah, Pickle says Bill Belichick had his girlfriend here in Nashville. Okay, well, I've read that the Titans wouldn't be interested in signing Belichick, nor Jim Harbaugh. Court, I think it was Dinah Ricini from The Athletic. Hope that those guys actually get a interview here in Nashville. That would really be good for the Titan fan base here. But I'm just telling you what I've read. Okay, now, Belichick, not the Patriots coach after 24 seasons. I noticed that they did do a dual press conference today, him and Robert Kraft together. Contrary of what others think about Kraft, I think he's a stand-up guy. I think he's a patient owner. I think he is an invested owner. He's one of my favorite in the entire NFL. Then later on, when I show you what he was making, you'll say, well, yeah, Robert Kraft is a guy that it is highly invested, and he will attract good candidates here. Now, of course, now they're saying possibly Jared Mayo is the odds-on favorite to get it. I don't know why, because he's another defensive-minded background for a coach, but I know he's been groomed to be the successor of Bill Belichick for quite some time. But I'm not so sure about that, okay? But got some sound bites here. Here is Bill Belichick actually tipping his hat to the media and getting a little choked up today when talking about the New England Patriot fan base. Listen up, Bill Belichick here early this afternoon.
It's the media for you guys. I don't know that anybody's gotten more coverage than I have or we have in the past 24 years. I meet with you guys a lot. Respect what you do. You're a voice to the fans, and even though we don't always see eye to eye all the time, most of the time, but not all the time, I do respect what you do. And finally, to the fans, The fans here are amazing. There's so many
Paul's
memories of
there.
fans, the send-offs, the parades, the Sundays.
Yeah, never heard
whatever
Belichick
the
sound
situations
emotional
are.
like that.
The letters of support, seeing the fans.
Dr.
Wait
Doom
for
and
me,
Gloom
or,
is
at a
human.
gas station or a grocery store, or wherever you bump into them. Patriot fans here, and not just in New England, but they extend nationally and even internationally as I've traveled. It's amazing how far the arm reaches. We saw that this year in Germany. So appreciative of the fans for all the support they've given me, my family, and this football team.
Yeah, choke it up, Bill Belichick, a different side, a softer side of Sears. That Pickles, remember those commercials? Okay, now then he finishes up. Now here's Robert Kraft.
Thank you, Bill. Good afternoon, everyone. And as Bill mentioned yesterday, we met and mutually agreed to part ways amicably.
And that was a good scope here. That was one where I said, listen, I thought it's going to be, I said this during the season, during the off season, this is going to be one of those mutually agreed to part ways. And now that has come to fruition. More from Robert Kraft.
And like a good marriage, a successful head coach owner relationship requires a lot of hard work. And I'm very proud that our partnership lasted for 24 years. I don't think in the NFL there's been any other partnership that lasted longer and has been as productive as ours. I trusted my instincts to bring Bill back to New England in 2000 after immediately regretting not hiring him after working with him together in 1996. When I did hire him, I was still making the transition from the fan who bought season tickets in 71, sitting on the metal benches in the old Foxborough Stadium with my boys, to try to become an experienced owner. Bill has taught me a lot over those years, and we had high expectations for what we could achieve together. I think we were the only ones who had those expectations, and I think it's safe to say we exceeded them. We did. Thanks.
And Belichick is standing right there, and he said, "Yeah, we did," and they did. They did. They did exceed expectations. Okay. And here is more from Robert Kraft on why he wanted to simply move on at this time. I think he's been very candid here. Kudos to Robert Kraft. I love the way he actually handled this whole situation. Listen up.
Well, the last 3 years have been pretty tough. And I know for our dedicated fans and myself, and in life, I just learned things happen, and our family is the custodian of this asset, the New England Patriots, and we know how important it is to the psyche of the community, and what's gone on here the last 3-4 years isn't what we want. So we have a responsibility to do what we can to fix it to the best of our ability.
I mean, listen, over the last few years, not only the fact you don't have the most talented quarterback in the world in Mac Jones, Belichick is arrogant enough to take a Matt Patricia, a lifelong defensive specialist, defensive coordinator, and a special teams coach in Joe Judge last year, and make these guys take a crash course on offense and teach it to a second-year quarterback out of Alabama. I mean, that is the recipe for disaster, not to mention the fact that Kraft let Belichick draft all these players. I mentioned that before. I didn't actually know they didn't actually have a general manager. Now, Kraft's son, he's got some kind of position at the organization, but they never had an actual general manager all these years here. I've talked about this numerous times with Keith Engel, which maybe I'm going to try to possibly get Keith on maybe next Wednesday on the program. The ultimate question is, what about Brady? What about Belichick? Who deserves all the credit? And I love the candid answer here. Kraft is exactly the way I would have framed this particular question about who deserves the credit and whatnot. Here's Robert Kraft on Brady, Belichick, who deserves all the credit or whatever during that 20-year run that they had together. Listen up.
You know, when it comes to what happened on the field with this football team, how much in your eyes was it Tom Brady and Bill Belichick when it comes to everything that's been accomplished over the last 24 seasons?
You know, it's not the first time I've heard that question, but you know why I love the NFL and why I think it's great for young people to play it. It's a great lesson in life, because I don't think there's anything else, any other sport or any other experience that's as much team-based and collective-based as football. And I don't think either one of those two would have accomplished what they accomplished if they weren't together. And it's, you know, I think they were both the best at their professions. And, you know, we were lucky to have them together for 2 decades.
Yeah, 2 decades. Okay. People says, well, Brady this and Brady. What if Brady would have went to the Detroit Lions in 2000? What if he would have went to the Cleveland Browns in 2000? You can't tell me he would have had this kind of success. Okay. Bill Belichick took the Browns from the worst defense in the NFL. Okay, went back in I think they took over like from 91 to 94 or something like that. They were 32nd, and him and this guy named Nick Saban turned that into the number 1 defense in the NFL and won a playoff game. Okay, so this whole Brady stuff, I mean, and I like Brady too, and you got to give Brady credit. Listen, he was never, ever the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, the greatest of all time. Okay, 20 years in the NFL, 9 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowl wins with Belichick. And think about it this way. He's married to this supermodel wife, Tom Brady. All right. And even though, yeah, she's made her own money, we know all that. But women like to get in men's head. For example, look at Sierra, the famous rapper, R&B singer, whatever you want to call her. Look at what she's done to Russell Wilson. Okay. Wilson's had problems with Sean Payton. He's had problems going back to Pete Carroll in Seattle since they've been together. He makes all these wild demands and deadlines of Seattle coughing up that money. And as soon as they did, they stopped winning. And of course, they eventually moved him to Denver. And we know what the disaster that had been. But Brady, he spoke up to his wife. He said, listen, this is the formula for winning. Winning is more important to me right now than a few extra $1 million and to have my ego stroked just so I can say I'm the highest paid player in the league and I'm the baddest of them all, even though we've lost a lot of players because of this. And we're barely making the playoffs and getting put out in the first round. No, I'm going to take a much lower salary so we can be in position to win Super Bowls every single year. You know, so it is a miracle that this thing lasted with the egos, with the people that are in your head, family, wives, girlfriends, parents of the players. Think about, you got guys like Greg Jennings, former Green Bay Packer Greg Jennings, his sister mouthing off on the internet, calling anybody to listen, talking about how Rodgers isn't respecting Greg Jennings, making his life, very hard for him to deal with. Some of her, accusations or whatever. So you got the family thing, you got the wife thing, you got the fans here, you got sports talk radio back in the day. Everybody saying Brady should get more, Brady should get more. Well, Peyton got more. Yeah, he got more, Peyton Manning, and Peyton got less championships. Now Brady's got an ungodly $100 million plus contract waiting to be signed for Fox Sports right now, because he's got that GOAT status here. Just another look at just Belichick's resume here. 24 seasons as a head coach here, 9 Super Bowl appearances, 6 titles, 17 divisional titles, 266 wins, 120 regular season wins, 30-12 in the postseason. That is ridiculous numbers, man. That is just hard. You had Saban retire yesterday. You've had Belichick pushed out today, and again, he's 15 wins short of Don Shula. And I know for a fact that Arthur Blank, what I've read today with the Atlanta Falcons, he wanted to get Parcells in the 90s. He wanted to get Belichick in the late 90s and the early 2000s. He missed out both times. We know that Arthur Smith, the other Arthur, he has been fired. He has been fired from the Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta, they've got the 8th pick overall. They've got one of the better offensive lines in the NFL. If they can get a Michael Penix with that 8th pick, maybe in the 2nd round, get a Bo Nix or somebody, I would take a chance and roll the dice with the Michael Penix here. I'm sure Belichick is going to work with the general manager. I read something that he would be willing to do this in New England. And I think Kraft just says, no, I just want to go in a different direction. Listen, I know what the reports are saying by Ian Rappaport and everything about Jared Mayo. I like Jared Mayo. He's a former University of Tennessee player. I know he's a smart guy. I know he got a big raise to stay there as a defensive coordinator, but he is from a defensive background. And I do know that these coaches these owners around the league, like myself, I like probably Mike Richmond when he comes on here in a few minutes, they see where this league is going. We just talked about Pete Carroll being out in Seattle, 8 games above 500. Mike Vrabel, but this Vrabel 13-21 the last 2 years. This team is 28th and 30th in total defense, 30th for New England last year in total defense. You've got to score points in this league. You cannot just win on defensive alone and field position. We are way past those days in this league. Robert Kraft is fully aware. He's fully aware of what this league is at this current time. I do believe he's going to go from the offensive perspective, in my opinion. I actually like what Mr. Kraft said. I like the way he's handled this whole situation. This team does have good players on the defensive side. Anthony Gonzalez. They have a pass rush. They had a lot of injuries here. Their offensive line not quite as bad as a Tennessee or a New York Jets type of situation where they absolutely, desperately, the Patriots need a left tackle. That is not the situation in New England. So, and again, I think Kraft is one of the better owners in this league. I've looked over a few. Just kind of stand by, Mike. I got to finish this rant. I got the great Mike Richmond back behind stage here. Going to talk about the Commanders here in just a minute. But the Patriots, their mock drafts have them Everyone I've seen, other than maybe two, I've looked at about 5 this morning. I've been looking at mock drafts for the past 3 weeks. They have the Patriots taking Jalen Daniels out of LSU, the quarterback there. Now, I have this vision in my head of them going after a guy like let me make sure I got his name right here. Todd Monken here from Baltimore. Okay. You look at Daniels, he's a very good athlete. I've just had this vision of Todd Monken using a Jalen Daniels type of situation and schemes, making him kind of like a Lamar Jackson type of player there up in New England here. I think that would be an ideal marriage. I said the same thing for Anthony Richardson and, of course, Shane Steichen in Indianapolis. And, of course, so far that's worked out. Now, of course, I know Richardson got hurt early in the season, but I could just tell you what Jim, with what the owner was thinking there when he brought in Steichen. And, of course, I was right. They did take Anthony Richardson. So I can see a Todd Monken type of coach here, 57 years old, been around, done miracles with Stetson Bennett at the college levels, and, of course, Lamar Jackson is going to win his second MVP here when those are handed out. I think it's just before the Super Bowl. Jim Irsay, thank you, Pickles. Yeah, losing track of thought. I was thinking about Jim Moore, and not Jim Moore. That's the former coach of the Colts here. So, and other mock drafts got them taken, maybe a Marvin Harrison. The biggest problem with that team is they have no speed at the skill positions. I read some kind of weird statistic about the Patriots. They had one of the slowest offenses in the entire NFL. So, they have, and quite frankly, they're not too much farther away from Tennessee as far as being third in the as far as being third in most cap space. I've got Mike Richmond backstage. Washington, they've got $86 million in cap space according to Spot Track, followed by the Titans here in Nashville, 77. Well, the Patriots have $75 million in cap space. They have several defensive pieces here. They have a fair offensive line here. They need a coach. They need a quarterback. They need a B12 shot, essentially, like Robert Kraft was saying. But I tell you what, if you're a Patriot fan, again, I like these young defensive coaches. Don't get me wrong. But Jared Mayo, there's no way I would hire Jared Mayo right now. It's just not the time to hire Jared Mayo. It would be one of these offensive guys. Like I said, you're going to get your usual suspects here. But as far as Ben Johnson, somebody like that. So Kraft's going to pay the money. By the way, Belichick was making $25 million last year. Belichick has made over $225 million. So would he get a Jim Harbaugh? This guy's got the kind of money. He will put his money where his mouth is. So I do think that he's going to swing big. I think he will interview a couple of guys. He's gonna go by the Rooney Rule, and but if he does, he's fooled me. If he goes small and hires a Jared Mayo or even a Mike Vrabel, who's a former defensive head coach here out of Nashville. So yeah, and Pickle says Todd Monken would be job one. Yes, Monken would be my guy, and then having that third pick, I'd go right after Jalen Daniels. So, anyways. I think he's going to be fine. I think possibly the Chargers could go after a Belichick. They better start about 35 million because of the high California tax rate. But ultimately, I think that Arthur Blank is going to make Belichick an offer he can't refuse. He'll probably bring down Josh McDaniels and go out and get those 15 wins that he needs to surpass Don Shula. And he's going to end up being considered the most successful coach of all time. He'll have the wins, and, of course, he'll have the Super Bowl titles there at 6. I'm not sure if he can – and maybe if he works out something with the Spanos family, but history says that the Spanos families, even though they're denying it, they're somewhat on the cheap side. So we'll have to see about that. So, anyways, okay. Without further delay here, let me bring in Mike Richmond. Good to see you again, man.
Good to see you, Robert.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me on.
Even have you ever? Let me ask you a general football question. Today is Thursday. Have you ever, since you've been following the NFL, seen this many big names either be forced out, retired? Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel here, Nick Saban in the college game. Have you ever seen a week like this?
I haven't. Oh, well, I mean, we usually see something like this right after the last NFL regular season game, Black Monday. There's usually like a series of firings in the NFL, head coaches let go. It's a lot, though. I mean, actually, Saban being a college coach, I mean, that was certainly a shocker. In fact, he added to the coaches who are on their way out. Of course, it was his own decision, but that really is a shocker. Coach is as successful as he's been on the college level.
Yeah, I was just saying, like these guys are Hall of Fame coaches. The defensive coaches being pushed out like this. We didn't expect Vrabel to get fired here. I'd been reading about Vrabel, but a lot of that stuff, you think it's clickbait. I thought maybe he'd get another year down here. I knew that they had a lot of money. And, Monday goes by, nothing happens. And then, of course, we know Vrabel's been fired. And then Belichick this morning, Pete Carroll yesterday afternoon.
That was a shocker too. I mean, I don't think anybody really expected Pete Carroll. Of course, we're not, part of that Seattle media. They probably had had a better handle on what was possibly going to happen. But I don't think the rest of the country knew that Pete Carroll was going to be fired.
Yeah, well, he won the same amount of games he did last year. I know they didn't make the playoffs, and I guess the thought was, well, I mean, you've got better players. They've had a lot of very high draft picks. Remember, they got those picks from the Russell Wilson trade, Devin Witherspoon, Jason Njigba-Smith out of Ohio State. But, these defensive coaches, they get a quarterback that don't turn the ball over and then they think that's just fine. Well, let's just roll with it. And, we saw what happened. They got swept by a Rams team that they had $70 million in dead cap money and still swept Seattle.
In terms of Belichick, I'll say this. Without Tom Brady, he just wasn't the same head coach.
Right.
I'm not giving all of the credit to Brady for what happened when the two were together. Some of it, of course, was Belichick, but we've seen that without Tom Brady there, they made the playoffs one time in 2021. But other than that, I mean, he didn't make the playoffs in the 4 seasons that Brady's been gone. Made the playoffs one time, and he's kind of struggled as a head coach. This was the worst season for him. So, I wouldn't take a chance on him right now. I mean, I don't think the Washington Commanders are going to. They're probably thinking about him, but they're not going to look at him seriously. He's not going to come to Washington.
So you told me you went to Sunday's game. Wanted me to ask you about it. I had a few dollars betted on Dallas to win that game. How was that experience? Man, boy, I got a lot to ask you about this. How'd the game go Sunday night? And let's describe that situation.
Well, number one, compared to last year's game, they played in the season-ending game last year too. This year, everything was riding on the game for Dallas. I mean, they win the game, they win the NFC East. So they had to win this game. They didn't win last year's season-ending game. Right. So they came out and they played hard. And Washington just looked like a team they just were sort of a little bit going through the motions there. They were feeble in a way. They couldn't compete with Dallas. I mean, it's just really, really sad being a longtime fan of the franchise to watch it out there. I really, really felt bad for the few fans rooting for Washington in the stands. I mean, even at the start of the game, opening kickoff, it had to be at least 80% Dallas fans in that stadium. It was a sea of silver and blue in that stadium. It was really, really tough to look at. But that's what's come of the Washington franchise right now, which is why Josh Harris needs to get it right this time.
Yeah.
He needs to reverse the trend, what has been happening for the past 25, 30 years, just
Yeah.
all the struggles this franchise is having. He needs to bring in the right director of operations, general manager, the right head, who will get that person, I assume, will be
Yes.
appointed to get the head coach. He's got to make it right this time.
Who do you what direction would you like to see them go in that general manager? I've read a few things off at the Athletic. Adam Peters of the Chicago Bears assistant GM, and also no, wait a minute, San Francisco 49ers.
Adam Peters is a 49ers assistant.
Adam Peters and the Bears have this guy Ian Cunningham.
Yeah.
What do you think about
whoever they bring in as the director of operations, that person will most likely be tapped for the most part in selecting the head coach. But I think there will be some other people influencing the situation, such as former Golden State Warriors executive Bob Myers.
Yeah.
He was hired a few days ago. Also, former Vikings GM Rick Spielman. I think he'll be influencing as well. But I think it'll mostly be the new director of operations that they bring in. In terms of a head coach, I would like to see them go for one of those promising young assistant coaches, never been a head coach in the NFL, somebody who's young, hungry to succeed at the head coaching level. I mean, there have been so many assistant coaches that have walked out the door of Redskin Park and become successful with other teams. Case in point, I mean, the worst situation was Sean McVay. With the Rams. He was an assistant here in Washington, goes to the Rams, wins a Super Bowl there. Kyle Shanahan has been tremendously successful in San Francisco. He most likely will have the 49ers in the Super Bowl this year. Kevin O'Connell with the Vikings. He was once an assistant here in Washington.
Kevin O'Connell. These guys are great.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel with the Dolphins.
Yeah.
And Matt LaFleur with the Packers. So 4 of those 5 coaches are in the playoffs this season.
Wow.
Of those 5 coaches that once coached here in Washington, 4 of them are in the playoffs this season. So I'd like to see them go after a coach such as that with those types of attributes and that promising assistant with potential for the future. Now, with that said, I wouldn't mind them bringing in Jim Harbaugh as well. If he really wants to
think big.
If he really wants to leave Michigan,
yeah,
I wouldn't mind them bringing in Jim Harbaugh. I mean, he's a hell of a coach.
Yes.
And he proved in the NFL he can take a team to the Super Bowl that, with Colin Kaepernick, who was never an elite quarterback.
No.
But if he could do it with Kaepernick, I mean, that's a pretty good job that he did.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make you feel good. I had a list last night of the best jobs. This was before the New England job came available. I had Washington as number 2 because you have the most cap room. You have the number 2 overall pick. And everything I read about Josh Harris, he's a good guy to work for.
Yeah,
so,
I think.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot for anybody to want to come here to Washington. I mean, there's a lot that they have to play with, such as the $90 million of cap space and the number 2 pick. I mean, and they have a pretty good nucleus of players on offense who could playmakers on offense. Terry McLaurin, receiver.
Yes.
Brian Robinson, running back. So they have a pretty good nucleus already. On offense, what they need is an offensive line. They need to really revamp the offensive line.
Do they need left tackle, or is it just? I thought their tackle was okay, right? It's the interior.
Cosme was their best offensive lineman this year.
Okay,
Sam Cosme, but I think they need to revamp the entire offensive line.
Okay.
First of all, that line relinquished 65 sacks this season.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sam Howell, I think any quarterback would have done better behind that line if the line was much better.
Yeah.
Protecting the passer, run blocking, things like that. I think Howell would have done much better as a quarterback. I mean, he had 21 touchdowns, 21 interceptions this year. He threw for nearly 4,000 yards. So with all the talk of them possibly drafting a quarterback with the number 2 pick, I don't think they necessarily should give up on Howell just yet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of potential. Now, I guess they'd have to consider the circumstances if they draft a quarterback such as North Carolina's Drake May or Caleb Williams if he's available. Then what are they going to do with Howell? I mean, I guess he's going to be the backup, and or maybe they could trade him. Maybe he has potential to be a starter. Another team could think that they would want him as the starter. So
Wow.
maybe
So
they could. Maybe
you
they
would
could
be
trade him.
okay with maybe taking a Joe Alt or somebody at left tackle at number 2 rather than a Drake May?
I think here's what I say about fortifying the offensive line. Okay.
Yeah.
Any quarterback needs pass protection. Okay.
Yes.
So they need to rebuild the offensive line. And like the Cowboys, for instance, they have at least 2 offensive linemen they are probably going to be future Hall of Famers.
Yes.
Okay. And overall, that offensive line is very, very good. All right.
Yes.
I think any team today that has a really good offensive line, that team on offense is going to have a great chance being very productive. In terms of the Washington franchise, you just look back to the Hogs offensive line.
Yes.
When Joe Gibbs coached here the first time from 1981 through 92, the one constant on that team was the Hogs, the offensive line. I mean, most of those players, the great players, Russ Grimm, Joe Jacoby, Jeff Bostic, Don Warren, they were together for the entire 12-year period.
Yeah,
And they
I'm
had other
totally
great players.
with you. That's what we need here in Nashville. We have the worst line in the league, man, and that's just a lot of it is when you have a defensive-minded head coach, they poo-poo the offensive line, they poo-poo the quarterback position.
Right. Well, with Rivera being defensive-minded, I think he disregarded the offensive line while he was here.
Totally disregarded it.
Yeah, I don't think he necessarily disregarded the quarterback position, although you could say that Sam Howell, being a 5th-round draft pick, that wasn't really investing too much in a
right,
in a future quarterback.
They put a lot of stock in that game last year, didn't they?
The game, which were the season-ending game.
Well, the one where they beat the Cowboys with Sam Howell last year.
Yeah, well, he finally started Howell after starting the former Eagles quarterback who they had last year,
Carson Wentz. Yeah,
Carson Wentz. Yeah. Carson Wentz was so bad during the season; he was injured for a large part of the season.
Yeah.
So instead, Rivera started Carson Wentz that game, and he threw 2 interceptions. He finally started Howell in the season-ending game.
Yeah,
it was too late then.
So, are you excited? I mean, I'm excited for you all right now because it seems like this is new beginnings right here, man.
Certainly it's a reason to be excited, but
yeah.
I've seen this dance before. They've had potential in other off seasons, a lot to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't remember a particular off season where they had up to $90 million in cap space, but they have had very high draft picks during the Dan Snyder era. And even in, with Rivera, they had the number 2 pick in 2000.
Yeah.
They took Chase Young. So, I mean, they have had that number 2 pick before, but so I've seen this before. I want to see how this plays out in the offseason. I'm excited, but at the same time, put it this way, I'm cautiously optimistic. Put it that way. Cautiously optimistic.
Yeah.
That's a political way of saying I want to see what happens.
Yeah, that's true, man. Yeah. Okay, what about you're not that far from Baltimore. Would you want a Todd Monken, the Baltimore offensive coordinator? Would you like for him to be a Washington Commander head coach?
Certainly with what he's done with the Ravens.
Yeah.
I mean, I would hope that he'd be able to, take that and apply it to a team like the Commanders. But, I mean, there's so many variables that go into the whole situation, such as personnel. So,
yeah.
I mean, look at Bieniemy this year. He was successful supposedly with Kansas City, but Ryan could have been having the most control over the Rex Ryan. I mean, or the Chiefs coach.
Andy Reid. Yeah.
Andy Reid. Yeah. I mean, Andy Reid could have had the most influence on that offense while Bieniemy was there. But this year, I think there's mixed results on Bieniemy coming to Washington. I mean, I personally don't think they should hire him or seriously. I don't know if they'll seriously consider him as the head coach. I would doubt it. I just think the jury's still out on him.
He seems like he's just coordinator. He comes off as I've always read that the reason why he hasn't got a job is he's just not a good interview. Maybe he's just really good at what he does.
I've heard that too. I've heard that too about him. So, but that's the point I was making is personnel on one team doesn't necessarily translate to good personnel on another team if a coach is moving from one team to another.
Yeah.
And
You
like
know,
in
the
terms
more
of
I
your
think
question
about
about
it, Harbaugh may be the best fit there. I mean, other than maybe I said the Charger job was the best job because they've got Justin Herbert. They got a left tackle. They've got a pass rusher. Which one do you think is the best job out there right now?
you mean of any of the jobs
The 8 that's available.
Well, I'm going to sound biased right now. I think the Washington job is pretty good in terms of the
I'd
getting
say
back
it's
to the
like
number
number
2 draft
two.
picks.
Yeah.
And going back to the number 2 draft pick and the $90 million of cap space
Yeah.
and the optimism that's surrounding Josh Harris and his crew in terms of the ownership. I mean, that, he's been successful in the NBA with the 76ers. I guess he's had limited success with the New Jersey Devils. I don't think he's reached the same level with the Devils, if I'm correct, as he has in the NBA. But he certainly, having that success in the NBA, he knows how to run a pro sports franchise. So he's got to put his stamp on the team right now. He's got to get it right. I mean, this was his maiden year, and I mean he bought the team over the summer, so you can't really blame what happened this season on Josh Harrison and his fellow owners.
So you're saying this is probably the best job if you compile everything.
I would think so. Yeah. I mean, I think it's an excellent job to come to.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. Well, I've got your book at the bottom of the screen, George Allen, A Football Life. How is that tour going?
George Allen, Football Life. It's going really well. I've done a lot of media interviews, such as with Sports Scope, and
Thank you.
You've been great, Robert.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of publicity that I've had with the book, and I don't have the numbers yet in terms of sales that will come officially until the summertime. But I've heard some preliminary findings from my publisher, and they think it's doing well for a book only 2.5 months since its official release date. So things doing well. Anecdotally, I've heard from a lot of people they love the book. You read the reviews on Amazon; it's had some very positive reviews. Like all 5 of the reviews on Amazon have been positive.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that is awesome. I was just sitting there brainstorming quarterback position. Would you consider going the veteran route, making a move for a Russell Wilson, for example, or do you just want to go young at quarterback, or possibly just stay with Sam Howell?
Either stay with Sam Howell or go young at quarterback. I would not take a chance with Russell Wilson.
Okay. I was just checking. A lot of people throwing Wilson's name out there for everything. I mean, Atlanta and everything.
I would not go with him. He struggled this year.
Yeah.
So I would not take a chance with Russell Wilson or any aging, formerly successful quarterback for that matter.
Right.
Unless Tom Brady. I don't want to say if he came out of retirement
7 years ago.
Yeah, well, say if it was a Tom Brady jumping from New England to Tampa. Maybe take a chance on Tom Brady in that situation.
Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins, I don't think they should take a chance on Kirk Cousins either.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I tell you what, he was a really good quarterback when he was here in Washington, but he had trouble winning the big games. Yeah. And I don't know how the Vikings fans feel about him, but I don't think he's certainly not an elite quarterback in the NFL. No. Not even close to it, really. I mean, he's a good quarterback, but Washington should not take a chance on him.
Right. Yeah. Kirk Cousins, he finds more ways to get more money than any. Something, going back to Belichick, Russell Wilson's wife was in his head. Sierra, she's a singer, and he starts coming up with all these demands for Seattle. We're talking 6-7 years ago, and he's like, if you don't sign this contract by this certain day, Seattle, I'm no longer negotiating. That is all his wife. So look at Tom Brady, supermodel wife. He was never the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. You got to credit him with taking that kind of sacrifice, because his wife's probably saying, even though we've got money, you deserve to be paid more. And he's like, nah, I'm kind of like I want to win big games. I don't want to get put out in the first round. I don't want half this team getting traded. I mean, that run, do you ever see a run like that ever again where everybody is just thinking about one common goal? 20 years?
No, it's unbelievable. I mean,
Yeah.
that lasted as long as it did. I mean, Brady was just, often in conversation, people say, well, you can't compare a quarterback from one era to a quarterback from the past. For instance, like you can't say that Johnny Unitas is the greatest quarterback of all time because quarterbacks have been allowed to do different things in different eras.
Right.
I would say Tom Brady is the greatest of all time. He's the GOAT.
Yeah.
For winning 7 Super Bowls, 6 with one team, and then one with the Buccaneers. The statistics that he posted, he is the greatest quarterback of all time. I can that argument you can in the case of Brady, you can say he's the greatest of all time, but with other quarterbacks, it's very hard to do that because quarterbacks are allowed to do different things in different eras.
Right.
There's more leniency in today's game in terms of the passing, and it's a more pass happy game. But things that Brady's accomplished, though, it is just phenomenal.
Yeah, and just the discipline not to be letting his emotions and his ego, Mike, get in the way and say, no, I want to be paid more than Peyton Manning. I've won more than Peyton Manning. I want $35 million. We're talking 12 years ago. What if he said, I want $35 million then when everybody else is making 18? I mean, Kraft would have gave in to him, right?
Most likely, yeah. But you got to credit Tom Brady for not doing that.
That's serious discipline.
Speaking of the money, I want to give credit to Lamar Jackson because he got the big money this year, but he produced at the same time.
Yes.
Like you said earlier, it looks like he's going to be the MVP of the league.
I think so.
Yeah. But he produced with that money. Now, not every quarterback does that.
No.
Such as Joe Flacco, another Ravens quarterback.
Yeah, he got complacent after 13, didn't he?
Right. He got the money and his game tailed off. So not every quarterback succeeds after getting the big money.
Is everybody in your town either a Washington Commander or Raven fan? Is it kind of like the Yankees and the Mets a little bit because it's so close together?
Washington has a much bigger fan following than the Ravens, although the Ravens are catching up.
Okay.
And I would say that's a very interesting question because for the younger generation in this area, that hasn't grown up with the tremendous success that we saw, like during the Joe Gibbs 1 era, like if you were, I don't know, if you were
30?
born, if you were like 5 years old, I guess when the Redskins won their last Super Bowl, you probably don't remember. So if you were born in like the mid to late 80s, so you're close to 40 years old, you don't remember any of that stuff. So you probably become a Ravens fan.
Okay.
Yeah, I know a lot of students that went to high school with my daughter.
Yeah.
They are Ravens fans today.
Wow.
Yeah.
They got the Ray Lewis jerseys and
they are Ravens fans because that's what they've grown up with. They've grown up with this perennial success of the Baltimore Ravens year after year, if not pushing for the Super Bowl, then at least making the playoffs, having winning seasons.
Yeah.
So that Ravens team really this younger generation has really become hooked onto the Ravens. I would say, some of the older crowd too, they become Ravens fans as well. I know some people who have departed the Washington football team and have become Ravens fans.
You think they'll come back though?
Come back in terms of the name?
If Harris turns it around to Washington.
I would love for them to turn back and become the Redskins again. I mean, I think a lot of people would really enjoy that and appreciate that. I mean, because that's what we've known them as over the years. But I think there would be, controversy regarding that if he tried.
Yeah.
But if they become very successful, who knows? Like I think for the most part, the critics back off the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, true.
They're a very, very successful organization, and the critics, they don't pick on the Chiefs that much for their name. So
that's true. Would Newt Rodney say everybody loves a winner, right?
Everybody loves a winner, exactly. So now, if Washington, if this franchise ever became a big time winner again, and I'm not just saying a playoff season 1 year, I'm
Yeah.
saying making a serious push for a Super Bowl or winning a Super Bowl, they've
Yeah.
got to do that. Maybe at that point, Harris will consider changing the name back to the Redskins, or they could go to some name that evokes the tradition of the Redskins having that Native American theme, such as the Red Hogs.
Nice.
Red and the
Yeah.
Hogs offensive line.
Yeah. And you know something, at one point, I think we talked about this before, the Redskins were the number 2 most valuable organization in the NFL. Wonder where they're valued now. Do you know?
I don't know, but Forbes had them among the top 5 for many years
Wow.
under Snyder.
Even with
Yeah.
Snyder.
Yeah. They I don't think they're up there anymore, but they're still a very valuable franchise.
Yes. Several billion dollars. Well, I got to have you back on the program, especially perhaps after the draft, and see what. I'm curious. You're one of the most fascinating teams in the league. All this money, new owner, new attitude.
Right. Let's see what happens in the offseason. Like I said,
Yeah.
I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm hoping that Harris is going to get it right. So let's see what happens. I'm not like doing flips right now and saying,
Yeah.
hey, everything's going to be hunky dory because we're past Harris's first season and now he's going to put his official stamp on the team and they're going to become immediate winners. That's what I was actually cautioning prior to this season. Like everybody was saying, well, now that Snyder has sold the team, oh, we're going to go back to the Super Bowl again. I'm saying, just hold on. Got to rein it in a little bit. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I would be disappointed if you hired like who's that, Dan Quinn or somebody, Mike Vrabel. If I'm a Washington Commander fan, that would really just. What if you hired another defensive-minded head coach there, Mike? What's your reaction if it's just not really, if they just a bunch of garbage hires and deep down you're not going to be, it's going to be bad. What's your reaction?
I think they're going to go offense. I think they're going to go offense.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what if they do go defense? Are you just going to say, you know what? Forget this team, man.
I personally
I'm thinking about saying that here in Nashville.
I say one area of the defense they really need to improve is the edge rushers because they lost Chase Young and Montez Sweat. They traded them at midseason. So I actually, of the two, I was really sorry for them losing Sweat. I thought he was a really, really good player. Chase Young, there was a lot of questions about him. This was his first real season coming off an injury.
Yeah.
So, but I guess with the 49ers, starting over there and doing well, but I was really, really sorry to lose Montez Sweat.
Yeah. But if they do get a defensive-minded head coach, what's your reaction going to be if it's somebody underwhelming?
I'm not going to be too enthused about it. Probably somebody who has been a assistant coach in the NFL already as a defensive coach. I probably won't be too enamored with that. I think they're going to go offense in terms of the mindset on the team.
Right.
It's either going to be the offensive line they're going to focus on first, the offensive tackle particularly, or quarterback. So I think it's going to be an offensive-minded coach that they're going to bring in.
And your number one guy would be Harbaugh, per se?
For an existing head coach, yeah.
Yeah.
For existing head coach. I would love to see Harbaugh here.
Yeah.
I think it would he's a proven winner on both the pro and the college levels for what he did with the 49ers. With Colin Kaepernick, like I said, Colin Kaepernick was never an elite quarterback in the NFL. He was able to go to the Super Bowl with Kaepernick and just a fourth down incompletion away from actually winning that game. So
yeah. Remember Jay Gruden used to work there. What if they reached out to him? You think they would bring John Gruden up there?
I don't think they'd bring John Gruden.
He's too controversial.
I think he's a good coach.
Yeah.
From what I remember, and I never really studied John Gruden too closely, but he had a Super Bowl winning season.
Yeah.
With Tampa Bay. But what else did he really do as a
They
head
went down.
coach.
He got crazy at the end, didn't he? He
Yeah,
kept on switching quarterbacks every 5 minutes.
right. I don't think he probably went to the playoffs a season here, a season there
Yeah.
after winning the Super Bowl. But I don't think he was really the superstar coach that we saw winning the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay in the 2002 season.
Yeah, that's true. He really
And by
wasn't
the
that
way,
consistent.
the quarterback of that Tampa team was Brad Johnson, who
Former
just
Commanders.
former Washington quarterback who threw for 4,000 yards in 1999, Snyder's first year of owning the team. And then Snyder, in that offseason, that 2000 offseason, he brought in Jeff George,
Yeah.
who was a head case.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff George was arguing with his head coaches on the sidelines.
Man. Yeah. I remember
That
you telling
alienated
me
Brad
that.
Johnson. He left the team after the 2000 season, signed on with Tampa. I know they went to the playoffs in 2001. I think they lost to the Eagles that year, and then they won the Super Bowl the following year.
Sure did.
So it's not only former Washington assistants who've been very successful as head coaches, it's quarterbacks too.
Man. Wow. It's about like the Cleveland Browns. I'm always reading about their defensive players going other places and doing great. But now they seem to have it together. There's hope out there. The Detroit Lions are in the playoffs. The Cleveland Browns are in the playoffs. It's a league of hope.
You know, it's this will blow you away. I'm sure you know this. The Lions, of any team in the NFL, their last playoff win or appearance was the 91 season. I think it was a win, right?
Yes, over Dallas, I think.
Right. They beat Dallas that year, and that they lost to the Redskins the following week in the NFC Championship game.
And you won the whole thing that year.
That was their last playoff win, the 91 season. Just imagine that. That's more than 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So you think it's been bad in Washington? It's been really bad in Detroit.
Right. And in Cleveland, they haven't had a Pro Bowl quarterback since Derek Anderson, and he was an alternate. Right. Then you got to go back to who's the guy that used to play for the Hurricanes? I forgot his name in the 80s. I could see his name, Pickles, one of my regulars. He'll tell me here in a minute. But they lost to Denver that year. Remember the drive?
Yes.
Yeah. So they haven't had a quarterback in forever. You know, I mean, they got Flacco now, but and Deshaun Watson, who's injured.
Right. Well, it's an interesting question I saw today. What is the worst moment in Cleveland Browns history? Was it the drive or the fumble?
It's had to be that fumble.
I think it was the fumble because the fumble, that was an AFC Championship game, wasn't it?
Yes.
While the drive, I think wasn't that a first round playoff game?
No, I thought they were both AFC champions.
Oh, they were both
Marty
AFC Schottenheimer.
Games?
So then I would say it's the drive, actually.
Yeah.
Because the fumble is one thing, but
the good news is they got destroyed in the Super Bowl that year. The Broncos.
They got destroyed both of those years in the Super Bowl. They got destroyed by the Giants on the year of the
49ers, right? One year was the 49ers. I think one year was the Giants.
It was 1 year, 86, the year of the drive, it was the Giants. 87, the following year, it was the Redskins.
Yeah.
That was the year that Doug Williams quarterbacked the Redskins.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Woo. Man, he was great, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
He had his moment in the sun, yes.
Yeah, Doug Williams.
He was really just like, sort of an above average quarterback. There was nothing great about Doug Williams, except for that one game.
Yeah, I guess you were on cloud nine that Super Bowl Sunday, huh?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about that Joe Gibbs coach team, and it's a major reason why Joe Gibbs is in the Hall of Fame, he coached 3 teams to Super Bowl wins with 3 different quarterbacks.
Right.
There probably will never be another NFL head coach who does that. And actually, that goes back to what I was saying about the Hogs. With that Hogs offensive line, it didn't matter who was playing quarterback back there. They had that great offensive line, pass protection. The year that Mark Rippon quarterbacked the Redskins in the Super Bowl
91,
win in 1991, he was sacked 9 times that year.
The whole year?
The whole year.
That's really good.
He may have been sacked 7 or 7.5 times, and they pulled him in the season-ending game, and then there was like another sack and a half in the season-ending game. Yeah.
Yeah. that makes me think I've been bragging on the Ravens. They've had 2 Super Bowl wins by 2 different quarterbacks since the start of the century. Joe Flacco and, of course, Trent Dilfer.
Trent Dilfer, right.
Yeah. I mean, that's just a good organization, man.
Yeah.
Pickles.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think Harris has actually said he'd like to model the Washington football team after the Ravens franchise.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't,
the Ravens,
actually?
you know. I was never a Lamar Jackson guy, but he's won me over, man. He's worked his butt off, and that organization has put a lot into him, you know.
Right. Well, I was actually a little surprised they took a chance on him, bringing him back in the offseason.
Yeah.
I thought because of what happened at the end of last season where he sat out a few games and, I thought they were not going to bring him back.
Right. Remember, he was injured last year, and he was injured the year before that.
Right.
He missed.
And he sit out a playoff game, too? Did they make the playoffs last year?
Yeah, with Tyler Huntley.
Right. He didn't.
They're just a very good organization, right? Man.
Yeah,
drafting's huge, and ownership's a big deal.
Well, they got hot with Flacco down the stretch, certainly. I think that 2000 team was a better team. I was certainly one of the greatest defense in NFL history.
Yeah.
But I think Flacco, when you compare Flacco to Trent Dilfer, I'd say Flacco was a better quarterback, but Dilfer had his moment in the sun too.
Yeah, that's true. Mike Richmond, everybody. Well, good luck, man. I'm going to be following your team. It's going to be one of the more fascinating teams. I hope you come back here on the program, and especially if you get a big hire like a Harbaugh or somebody.
Well, just let me know. If not for the hiring, then have me back around the draft.
Oh, yes. Thank you. All right, man. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thanks, Robert.
All right, buddy. Hey, everybody. I will be back on tomorrow with Carlos Mad New Yorker Chavez. I understand we have games this weekend. But something I've kind of, with Belichick and then, Nick Saban. I mean, it's like I don't even want to watch the games, but I cannot wait to see. We got some good ones here. Kansas City, it's going to be really cold, possible 30 degrees below zero wind chill in Kansas City. Saturday night here, that's going to be a good one. Sunday night, Detroit and the LA Rams. That's going to be a good game. Okay. So a lot to keep up with here. Cannot wait for this weekend. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you the same place, same time tomorrow here on Sports Scope.